Welcome to the show, Majlinda. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. This has been, like we were just talking about, like a long time coming, right?
Yeah.
Couple years
A
now.
couple of years. Yeah, probably at least 2 years, I would
Yeah,
say. Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy, but it's cool because I've been able to see you guys grow
Mm-hmm.
and expand your business
Yep.
and all that kind of stuff. So I'm excited to kind of chat with you. So let's start off with why did you become a nurse practitioner?
So prior to becoming a nurse practitioner, I was a bedside nurse for 10 years. Worked all that time in a hospital setting. Loved it. But as I was going through my nursing career, I was noticing just the same issues people were coming in. There was a lack of education or a lack of really preventive care. A lot of the patients that were coming in, we were trying to educate them on how to manage their disease process instead of having spoken to them years prior to prevent that. So over the years, we had our frequent flyers. They kept coming in, and at that time, it's really difficult to change people when they're not feeling well. So I made it a mission of mine to do true preventive care and try to get to patients prior to disease actually happening, or if disease is present, to get them when they're not acutely ill and trying to just get better, and seeing them in a setting and an atmosphere that is more conducive to learning and educating and empowering patients to manage their own health care. So a lot of times in the hospital, I felt like we were controlling the patient's health, like we weren't giving the patients the tools to really get better and be able to take responsibility for their own, what they did outside of the hospital.
Yeah.
It's easy to manage your diet and do this when somebody's only giving you this food, right? But once you leave the hospital, that's when you really need to take into, like do all the things that we're taught. So, that's kind of how it came about. The more and more I saw these patients, the more I would go home and I would be frustrated because I would see the same people coming in over and over and over again for the same things. And so when I would talk to my husband, also the co-owner of the clinic, he was a firefighter paramedic, and he saw the same thing as well in his field. So we talked a lot about preventive health. So we were both passionate for that. And so for me to be able to do that would be to become a nurse practitioner. So I went ahead and got my master's degree. And from there on out, I went into a traditionally conventional office for primary care, thinking that that's how I'm going to help patients. And I did. I worked with a phenomenal doctor who's just amazing at what she does. But again, that traditional like insurance-based model does not give you the opportunity to really spend a lot of time with the patient and really dive into those root causes. So after working with her for a little over like a year, 2 years, I decided to go on my own and opened up my own clinic so I could do it more my way.
Yeah. And your clinic is Enhanced Body.
Yes.
For people that don't know, like what is myself, what is a nurse practitioner? Like what is your role in that career?
Yeah. So a nurse practitioner is a provider. So we are providers here in Florida. Every state is a little bit different on the scope of practice.
Okay.
In Florida, nurse practitioners became independent a few years ago. What that means is that I don't have to have a medical provider above me. Like I don't have to have an MD or DO. I assess, diagnose, treat, all of that. So people say, like, what can't you do? Really, there's not much that I cannot do besides there's certain classes of medications that are, that I don't prescribe. But besides that, for any acute illness, sick, managing chronic disease management, like blood pressure issues, cholesterol issues, weight, all that, I can do all of that. So when you just primary care provider is, what I am. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So, so let's talk about like the preventative care, because
Hmm.
it's interesting. I've had a few either doctors on or I think like nurse practitioners
Hmm.
like yourself on the podcast before, and
Yeah.
like the like the whole preventative thing, like it just makes sense to me.
Yeah.
It's like, why aren't we doing more of that? Like, why aren't we educating?
Yeah. It's it's because it takes a lot of time,
Yeah.
and, it's not easy. You know, you need patients need to come in and really want preventive medicine. Most patients that feel fine, right? You're in your 20s, maybe 30s. You're not, you don't have anything big going on. They don't think about taking those steps to go in and be like, okay, what am I maybe not doing right that is going to lead to a problem? The other thing is, most of the time, conventional physical exams, conventional blood work don't really assess a patient to the degree where, like, you can pick up on some things going on a cellular level that might not appear yet in a blood serum, blood
Mm-hmm.
test,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe starting to happen, and in 10 years from now they may develop something, right? So um, it's a little bit more in depth when it comes to assessing and really getting to know the patients at a level where you may pick up on things that they're doing or not doing in their life that could potentially lead to a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, our insurance-based model is not designed to do that, to pick
To
up on things
prevent
that.
prevent
Correct.
things from happening.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
Just to cover you when it does happen.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. We don't we're treating symptoms,
Yeah.
right? We're
Yeah.
not preventing anything from coming about. So it's I do think that, especially since the pandemic hit, I think that patients are seeking it out more. I think the pandemic, one of the silver linings of it, in my opinion, is that patients are starting to realize, like, oh my God, like, I really need to figure out, like, how healthy am I,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there was patients that got COVID that, quote unquote, didn't have any chronic illnesses, that didn't do very well, right? And so now, like, people are like, okay, well, how do I prevent these things? How do I get myself healthy enough so that, God forbid, something should happen, like, my body can respond
Mm-hmm.
well?
Yeah.
So I definitely have seen over the past few years a shift in mentality for a lot of patients, and I'm also seeing a shift in the younger generation. I have patients that are now coming to me in their early 20s and, like, hey, I just want to know, am I doing things right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, school, health ed doesn't teach a lot of this stuff, right? Like, how do I prevent this from happening? Or, hey, my mom and dad have this. Like, I don't want to end up like that. Like, what do I need to do to not get there? So I am seeing that more and more, which makes me happy as a provider. Like, that has always been my goal, is just to make people aware of their health status.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna ask you. Like, is it like a generational thing, right? Because like our parents and stuff, like they didn't grow up in that,
No.
right? It was like you go to the doctor when you're sick, and that's it.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. I definitely think, and I think also just the knowledge that we have
Yeah.
at this
Like the
point.
internet has
The
changed a lot of
internet
that.
has changed. People, Dr. Google
Yeah.
can be your best friend and your worst enemy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I definitely think that having all this knowledge at the fingertips of a lot of this generation is making them question things more, and ask more questions. And so definitely, and these illnesses are coming up, and there's a more focus on preventive medicine. I think just in general, you hear it more. I don't
Yeah.
remember when I was, a teenager, I don't remember anybody ever talking to me about preventing anything.
Right.
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 Like, so.
Like living a healthy lifestyle, doing
Correct.
these. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just in general, it's just the awareness is there now.
Yeah, which is huge.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it.
Mhm.
I wrote this question down. Like, why do you think the medical system is failing? I think that's kind of like what we touched on, right? It's
Yeah.
just not, it's not preventative.
It's not preventative. There's no, I hate saying it, but there's, especially in the insurance-based model, there's not really reimbursement for preventive, right? A lot of like the testings that I do, so I do integrative medicine, meaning that I will prescribe medications, right? If somebody's coming in and they have something acutely going on, or something that I feel like might be life-threatening, or, the risks outweigh. To me, it's like, do the risks outweigh the benefits? Like, where are we at? I will prescribe, but my focus is to get to root cause. So a lot of the functional medicine testing, where you're doing gut health testing, like organic acid test, which focuses, that sees, on a cellular level, like, are you deficient in anything? Is there like a lot of gut like issues? Is there a lot of, is there different bacteria that are causing you issues? Insulin resistance is a big thing, right? A lot of inflammatory markers. Those testing, unfortunately, are not covered by an insurance model. So, and you have to have a special education in how to read those testing, right? It's not a single number. You have to look at it. Most of these tests are pages worth of results. And you have to look at those, correlate them with the patients and the patient's current history, symptoms, and their history and their family history. And you have to look at that. And that takes a lot of time. And that's just not how our healthcare system is set up. That is, that's why you have the functional medicine providers. That's what they do, but they take a lot of time doing that.
Yeah. Do you think that'll change, like with insurance? Like, is it changing?
It is changing.
Yeah.
There are, in the sense of what I have picked up, and I can't say a whole lot because although patients see me that have insurance, I don't take insurance. So I don't deal with insurance companies very often anymore. But I am noticing that a lot of these functional medicine testing companies are starting to say, hey, we can try to run it through insurance. Now, what I tell patients is the lab won't know whether it's going to get covered, and I won't know whether it's going to get covered. Like, it can get sent in, and then the insurance will choose. So that is, to me, a step. Like, that wasn't even something that functional medicine testing wasn't even allowing us to, for patients to even attempt to get it covered. It's not easy. I say, even in some of my conventional blood work that I do, where I just do a little bit more extensive testing, right? Full thyroid panels instead of just a TSH. And even now, when my patients that do have insurance go and send it through their insurance, I'll get it kicked back like frequently. But I still think it's headed in the right direction. I definitely do. I definitely think that we're getting there. There's still just a very long way to go. Yeah.
It'd be amazing if that was like your 20s or whatever, and like it's just like, this is the norm.
Absolutely. I said, I'm like, true preventive. That's true preventive screening, right? Let's not wait, until somebody's 40, 45, 50 to do some of these screening tests that they have. Like, why, if somebody has an extensive history of colon cancers in their family, why are we not starting to address this in their early 20s, right? Like, let's see how you're doing. Let's give you the right tools to make sure that nothing develops when you are that age. So we'll get in there.
Does that put like the pharmaceutical companies like out of business? Like, if you do, like, if that's like the norm, right? Because then
this is a touchy subject. Don't want to get on Big Pharma's bad side. But of course, yes. Right? It would put a strain on, right? If you're prescribing less medications, if you're fixing high blood pressure before high blood pressure occurs, right? Most patients with high blood pressure are not on one med. They're on dual, triple therapy. Right? So if you are talking to somebody in their, mid-20s and saying, hey, like, you're deficient in X, Y, and Z, like fix these things, do these things, eat this way, and they never develop hypertension, that, of course, that's going to take money out of big pharma, but that's
it's almost like that's the battle.
right.
Like, yeah.
Absolutely. It's a battle.
Because insurance and all that stuff.
Yeah. It's a, you know, it's crazy the world that we live in here, but and that even me not wanting to really put big pharma on their table, right? Like I don't need to get on their radar. But ultimately, we as a human race, as a population, like we want to live to not just to be healthy. Health to me isn't how long you live, right? It's quality of life.
Oh, for sure.
Right? We have patients that are in their 60s, 70s, 80s that they wouldn't necessarily be alive if it wasn't for medications. Now, are they taking those medications and they are living a fulfilled life and they're feeling great? Or are they taking that, 1 to 2 handful of medications and are bedbound or still in pain or feeling all the side effects of those medications? When I worked bedside nursing, that was one of the things I saw. There was a time period where I actually counted the amount of pills that I was giving to patients. And it was an average of 10 to 15 pills in the morning alone for one person.
Wow.
So now, is that person alive? Sure.
Yeah.
Right. But are they feeling all these side effects from, right? You're prescribing one medicine that's treating one thing, and then that patient now has a side effect because of that medicine that they need for that thing. So now you're treating with something else to combat that side effect. And that's how you add, right? That's how you add all these medications. But at the end of the day, they're not feeling well.
Right.
Right. So is that quality of life? So to me, it's not that medicine is bad. Like I believe in medications.
Right.
Somebody comes in and their blood pressure is through the roof. I'm like, hey, like you can't walk around like this, right? So I'm like, take this, but let's see how we can either limit the dose or keep it to this medicine and do these other things to help, prevent that for the future. But that takes a lot of effort on the patient. And I tell people, I'm like, I could lead the horse to the water. I can't make you drink it. I can tell you to do these things, but when you walk out of here, it's up to you to do them.
Yep.
If you don't, then you will likely need more meds. Same with diabetes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, most diabetics, especially early on, there's diet control. A lot of people are diet control diabetics that don't need medications.
Yeah.
So.
And it's almost like if you're not, I don't know, for me, so my experience, like, I don't like not feeling well.
Right.
So if I feel sick or like I stopped drinking. So when I was feeling, if I had a hangover, right, like I did not like that feeling.
Correct.
And so that was a big part of like why I would limit certain things.
Exactly. Not everybody's like that though.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah. So I don't know where that came from, but I part of it too, I feel like they're just used to not feeling well and they think that's the norm, right?
Correct.
So like to get off of the meds or to just get into like a healthier state.
Yeah.
And then they can have like that aha moment of like, oh shit, this is what it feels like.
Exactly. And you hit it like right on. A lot of people are used to feeling fatigue, brain fog, gut issues, right? Like, oh, I've just dealt with chronic constipation for, since I was XYZ. And I'm like, and that's normal to you? Or, like, oh, I eat and my stomach gets bloated right away and I just feel uncomfortable for an hour or two. And I'm like, and that you're okay with that?
I know. Yeah.
Like that's so, but we've been told that a lot of times I also think that because like, chronic fatigue, some of these like chronic fatigue, brain fog, things like that, they're very difficult to find the root cause of, right? It's such a generalized symptom that if patients initially did feel concerned about it and they went to a provider, okay, they got regular blood work done and everything was what I always hear, quote unquote, normal, right? So when I do blood work, to me, I tell patients, even if they've had it done, I'm like, bring it into me. I was like, because what is normal in the sense of ranges and what is optimal, or like to me, I try to optimize people,
Yeah.
right? Like you are in your, let's say you're 25, a 25's age person and a 60 isn't gonna be the same. Like you're
Right.
not, right? Like, so to me, I'm like, you need to be optimized. If you're on the lower end of something, although it's normal, maybe you're not feeling well because that's not your normal.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. So, yes, I think a lot of people walk around just thinking that this is how it's supposed to be, and they don't know.
Mhm.
I've had patients. I try not to tell people not to drink, but alcohol definitely causes a lot of inflammation systemically, right?
Mhm.
Not
Mhm.
that people don't know this, but I tell people, try going 6 weeks.
Mhm.
Like, you don't need to make a lifetime commitment.
Mhm.
I go, but even if it's certain foods, I'm like, try going 6 weeks without it. If in the 6-week mark you felt no difference, then go back to what you were doing.
Mhm.
But most of the time, within a few weeks, they're like, oh, like I feel like I just have a little bit more energy. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
oh, like I come home from work and I'm not like, oh, like have to sit on the couch. Like I get
Right.
to play with my kids, or, I can actually cook dinner without making it be such a chore,
Yep.
right? Or possibly think about going to the gym or going for a walk, or, and so I tell people, I'm like, just try it. I was like, because you don't know how much better you could feel until you try some of these
Mhm.
things.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
The alcohol thing is like fascinating to me.
Yeah,
Like how
it's
our
a
like
big,
society is
so
like that.
normal.
Yeah.
You're abnormal if you don't drink.
Right. 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 I listened to a podcast. I think that's what started me to like think about not drinking, and it's kind
Mhm.
of new for me. But it was Dr. Huberman, Andrew
Yeah.
Huberman's podcast, and
Yep.
he was like went through like all the things of like, is it healthy, is it, what it does to your
Right.
body and stuff.
Yeah.
And like the big thing for that podcast that stood out to me was basically like, if you have, I think it was like one drink
Mhm.
a week
Mhm.
or more,
Mhm.
it is like severely detrimental to your health.
Yeah. Your gut biome gets destroyed.
Yeah.
The inflammation that happens systemically. The liver is another thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
we process so many things through our liver. When you bog it down with alcohol, like it can't process your hormones. It can't
Mm-hmm.
process these other toxins that we may not have control over. I tell people, I was like, there's only so much stuff you have control over. What you put in your body
Yeah.
is number one, right?
100%
What you
control.
eat,
Yeah.
what you drink is the one thing you have full control over.
Mm-hmm.
So since we can't control everything around us, at least control that. But it's very difficult for people because it is such a social norm.
For sure.
It's, and people really look at you differently if you go out and you don't want. I'm like, I'll go out and they're like, you don't want some wine? You don't? I'm like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that I don't
Yeah.
drink, like I will here and there,
Right.
but I also know how it affects me. And, I don't tolerate alcohol well. Like my
Mm-hmm.
body doesn't. It took me years to accept that. I'm like, oh, I'm just hungover.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like you wasted an entire day.
Yeah.
Like, and you didn't feel good.
Yeah.
Like
That's not normal.
That's not normal. And then when it became 2 to 3 days of not feeling well, I was like, okay, like
Yeah.
we might need to like cut this down a little bit. And
Yeah.
but yeah, alcohol is it's one of the things I struggle with getting my patients to really. I have a lot of weight loss patients, right?
Oh, okay.
I tell people when you're on a weight loss journey, alcohol is the biggest factor in not getting people to lose weight. Like, I don't care if you drink once a week, when you drink that one every weekend, I'm like, if you do it every Saturday, like you're just going to play catch up. Right. Yeah. And most of my patients don't really accept that until I see them every week. And the weeks that they've consumed alcohol over the weekend, they see that scale either stay or go up. And I'm like, yep. And then I'll be like, okay, now don't drink and see what happens. And then they'll see it going down. I'm like, most people need to see it with their own eyes.
Yeah.
You
You got
know,
to see the
that's
data.
really
You got
what
to
it
see the
is. You need
results.
to, you
Yeah.
need to see the results.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, alcohol is, it's our legal drug.
Right. Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah, it is.
All right, let's talk about like going back into the business and like you guys starting out and opening up Enhanced Body. And I always ask people about like what's one thing you failed at right before, and everyone has a different like unique perspective on failure. So I want to hear like what's your perspective on failure when you hear that word?
Well, I think failure is only learning curves. So obviously in the business world, especially I come from a family of business. So my parents were restaurant owners, completely different than what I'm doing now. And I vowed actually I was never going to become a business owner because I grew up. Yeah, it's a lot of work, right? It's 24/7. Like people are like, oh, it's your day off. I go, day off? Like I don't have a day off, right? I think so to me, I don't feel like we've had any failures in our business. I feel like we've had some great learning curves. Definitely, you know, and we take these learning curves now, and obviously we've learned from them, and we actually try to help other people out that are opening businesses up to say, hey, we went here. Like I talked to a lot of nurse practitioners and that maybe want to venture out on their own. And I'm like, hey, like, don't do this, do this. You know, marketing and like how to market yourself. Providers are not, for the most part, like this is not where I thrive, right? Like this is, I thrive in front of my patients in an office, in a visit, right? I did not realize before opening how much marketing I had to do, right? Because I am not an insurance-based practice. I don't come up on people's lists of stuff, right? So people need to know who I am. We spend a lot of time on, you know, paying for different ads, doing this, doing that, and realizing shortly after that really word of mouth and these types of interactions and people actually getting to know me instead of just seeing a picture of me. You don't know me by a picture, right? Like to me, like these types, like podcasts and going to networking meetings and really getting to know people, I wish we would have put more value into that from the beginning instead of doing more of the ads and those things, because I feel like people feel more, they need to know you as a person, as a provider to feel comfortable, right? Most people are in a vulnerable state when they come see you.
Sure.
So I definitely learned from that. Spent a lot of time and money doing other things like that before learning that curve.
Yeah. And I think that's part of it, right? Like even if you come from a family of business owners, there's always learning curves, obstacles, whatever that you have to go through.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it was, you know, and then I guess I just also didn't realize, even though I came from somebody that grew up in businesses and knew that it was a 24/7 job, I was still a teenager, right? Like now owning my own business, I'm like, oh my God, now I see why my parents laid awake all night, like worrying about things. You have a good week, you know, you're on a high, and then the next week business is a little slow, and then all those fears and insecurities come up, and really building, you know, I wish I would have had maybe like me and my husband are a really strong support system, but getting like having other providers in my network, like I didn't start building that till after I opened up. When I realized like, oh, like I need like a team behind me that's not here, right? Like I need to have those people that I can reach out to and be my sounding board when things aren't going, you know, how I want it to go, or when I have questions about stuff. So I tell, you know, a lot of times I tell people, I was like, if you're building your business, meet people in your area who do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like stop being competitors work together. There's enough business to go around.
For sure.
There's not another nurse practitioner or another provider out there that I view as a competitor of mine. There's a lot of times patients come to my clinic and I look at them and I go, you know what? This isn't my wheelhouse. Like, but this NP or this doctor or, you know, like they thrive here. Like this is what they do. Go see them. And I have other providers do the same for me, right? Yeah. Like learn the people that do the same thing as you in your area and use them. Like lean on them. Learn from their mistakes, learn from their success.
Yeah.
You know, so.
I love that. And then going back to like what you said about marketing and like, like people getting to know you.
Yes.
Right. That's why they're going to come to you.
Huge.
Right.
Yeah. Definitely as a provider. I tell people, I was like, maybe different businesses, if you're selling clothing, you're selling a product, you're selling, you know, that pictures will do. Right.
Yeah.
But as a provider, as a healthcare provider, like your personalities need to match, right? Like you need to trust me. Like, so if you come in and you don't like me as a person, you're not going to open up to me. You're not going to trust my opinion and my the education that I'm giving you. So that was a huge wake up call for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Selling myself. That's terrible. It sounds terrible. I'm like, this sounds terrible.
It's so hard.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Did you ever have like a fear of failure, a fear of like failing when you open the business?
Oh yeah, I still do.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you get past that? Like what's your
my husband.
Yeah, support system.
Yeah. You know, and honestly now, like my family, I lean to my family and I'll talk to my mom and my sister and be like, hey, you know, you have that hard day and you're like, oh my God, it was a little slower. And then I call them, I'm like, hey, and they're like, what's going on? And then they're like, take that and make it your drive, right? Like, hey, you had a slow week, you had a slow day. Like, what can you do different? Look at what happened the past week. Like, what do you think you could have done more of? Where could you have improved? Or, so, but my husband usually is like, he'll look and he's like, hey, babe, like, look at how this month was. Like, look, like to get a perspective of getting you outside of that. So, but yeah, I mean, family is everything to us. So, leaning on them is really how I try to like get past it and switch it from feeling like you're failing to make it a motivator, like as to how to improve on what you thought you failed on. So, because we're very self-critical, right? And we're really hard on ourselves. And, and success is so hard to really determine, like, what is success,
it's different.
It's different for everybody. Is it a monetary value? Is, like, and a lot of times if I had a slower day, like, but I got to really help, my husband's like, but you helped that person out, right? And I'm like, I did. And he's like, is that not what matters? I'm like, yes, it is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's good to have like, just that constant reminder of like what's
perspective,
important.
What's important in life, right?
Yeah.
He's like, we didn't go into this to make a lot of money, right? Like, I'm like, no, we went into it to help people. Like that was what started this, like from the beginning. So he's like, you help people, like you met your goal.
Yeah.
So.
And for me, like I remember going back, like even like starting this podcast, like there'd be days where I wasn't feeling it. And I'm like, I don't know, man, should I cancel the podcast? Should I not do it? Even like 2 years in, I'm like, should I end the podcast? Right. And, and you're just like, no, you got to keep going, right? Just keep showing up.
Yeah.
And it's usually like those days that where it feels really, really hard and you just push through and show up. It's and like that. Those are like the magical days.
So about 2 weeks ago, I had just a terrible week. It was just like everything that I felt like was going sideways, like went sideways. And there's one thing my patient will probably tell you if you ask most of them is that I'm pretty real. How I'm talking here is how I talk in there. Like I don't sugarcoat things. I'm pretty straightforward. I'm obviously nice and empathetic, but like I feel like that's been part of the lack of in the medical field, right? Everybody is worried about like hurting your feelings and leaving a bad Google review or, like suing you or whatnot. But So whenever I come into a room, most of my patients know me pretty well and can normally tell when something's going on. Listen, I'm a human being.
Yeah.
I have family issues. My children make me mad most days.
Yeah.
You know, like there's things going on, right? I have other stressors besides work. And this week was especially hard. And I went in and my patient, was like, what's going on? And I'm like, man, you know, and I just laid it out there and they're like, well, you're helping me. Like, and you know, this patient started crying. She goes, you've made a difference in my life. And because I felt like I maybe wasn't doing enough for some people, right? And that was just like, I just sat there and we cried. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I just needed that. So to me, like just being real with people.
Yeah.
And, you know, and getting that validation from the people that you're helping also can kind of get you over that little hump.
Yeah. I love that. Just being more real.
Yeah.
And it helps like when you find your people too, right?
Oh,
like
for sure.
The people that like you, they're coming to you. They're going to be accepting of your failures and struggles and stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Be like, I'm human.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a robot. Like,
take it or leave it.
Yeah, take it or leave it. Like sometimes I mess up. Like that is a part of being a human. Just like, you know, like I give my patients that, you know, I was like, hey, you're going to mess up. Like, but I'm not perfect either, right? Like this is life. We're growing and learning together. And especially in the medical field, like I know it's science, but it is a mucky science. I tell people, I was like, as much as we learn about the human body, we find out that there is so much more that we don't know about it.
Sure.
So I was like, anybody that tells you that they know everything, they're lying. Like big time lying, you know? So, but yeah, it's failure is it's a fear of all of ours, right?
Yeah.
And you could either make it, let it make you stronger and get you, you know, or you can, it can swallow you
crush
whole.
you.
Yeah. It can crush you.
Yeah. All right. So I feel like we're gonna record another podcast in the future. So, but where can people find you, learn more about you?
Okay. So the clinic's name is Enhanced Body. We are located on Main Street, so 2196 Main Street, Suite H. We have a website. It's just www.enhancedbodyic.com. Our phone number there is 727-330-7769. So we also have Facebook, Instagram. You can go and look up all that stuff. But stop by anytime. We do IVs as well. So a lot of people will come in and get an IV. And a lot of times I'm around there and get to see me, talk to me, and kind of meet me before even making an appointment but all of our stuff is on our website, and anybody's more than welcome to call the office and get more information.
Yep. And then we'll have the links in the description below for anybody that wants to check out more about Enhanced Body. So, Majlinda, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.